Thank you, Piotr, and good afternoon to everyone. So in my presentation, I would like to highlight the importance of reaching out to reputable sources for information, echoing the comments of many of the previous speakers. On to the next slide, please. So I'm going to touch on aspects of misinformation, talk about how we at the EMA are working to address it through communication and transparency and engagement with stakeholders. Now, just by way of background, and perhaps somewhat surprisingly, given the magnitude and the gravity of the pandemic, we are seeing a high level of misinformation and disinformation circulating, which has a large public health impact. It undermines trust in medicines, fuels vaccine hesitancy, and limits uptake of life-saving vaccines. In particular, social media is being used to propagate an infodemic where disinformation and misinformation are being spread. It's also supporting, in some sense, the polarization of public debate on topics related to COVID-19. It's therefore critical that we work hard to stem the tide of misinformation and address confusing or misleading information head-on. On to the next one, please. So a few words about what we're doing at EMA. We're working to identify particular concerns and misinformation as early as possible, looking at the sorts of issues being raised in queries we receive from members of the public. We're not doing this alone. We're working closely with our regulatory partners, notably our colleagues at the European Commission and WHO. We're also engaging in active dialogue with the public and our stakeholders to listen to your concerns. Our aim is to address proactively and, if you like, pre-bunk the myths, trying to address the concerns before they take hold. We're also working hard to set the record straight as far as we can and have our voices heard on social media and through other communication channels. And our aim is to communicate the fact-based science that supports our regulatory decisions and, of course, to ensure full transparency on EMA's actions and decisions, and also on any data supporting our regulatory decisions. On to the next one, please. I'd like to give a couple of examples of misinformation that have come up recently. This first one relates to reports of suspected side effects reported in our safety database, which is called Vigilance. And these were picked up on social media. There were false reports showing inflated numbers of side effects reported with the vaccines that were wrongly claiming to be sourced from EMA. So to address this now, the agency provides a summary of the overall number of side effect reports and also publishes monthly safety updates that we produce for each of the vaccines. These reports put the number of suspected side effects into the context of the doses given and also provide the latest information on the safety profile in those monthly reports. And on the right-hand side, you'll see an image from our website where you can go and find access to the real numbers and also for further explanation. On to the next one, please. And another example, this one relates to claims that there is insufficient data on the quality, safety and effectiveness of COVID-19 vaccines, primarily due to the speed at which they've been developed and brought to the market. Now, to address this, EMA has published information explaining how vaccines are developed and authorized and how this can be condensed without compromising standards. And again, we've produced some infographics which are shown here on the right-hand side of this slide. And this really is supported by some material which explains how vaccines are developed comparing to more standard cycles and how that is brought much shorter to the market. Once again, we want to emphasize that there are extensive study results to support the vaccines, and we have full transparency on the basis of the authorizations. This is detailed in the assessments. So we publish European public assessment reports, and also we publish the clinical data that underpins those assessments. On then to a few words about how we're communicating. On to the next one. So yes, indeed, we are communicating. We've developed a number of new information materials or several tiers of information on development approval of vaccines. We're also responding to queries from members of the public, as well as patients, healthcare professionals, academia, and media. We're updating on key developments with regular bi-weekly press briefings, organising public meetings such as this one, and also engaging on social media. We're also undertaking more and more interviews with the media. Working with ECDC to provide content for the European Vaccination Information Portal. And importantly, on the portal, you'll find information on vaccines in all EU languages. And as and when needed, we will be providing safety communications to complement regular monthly safety updates. Now, I'd also like to share some examples on the next slide of the information we're publishing. So this slide shows an image that we've produced for Twitter, which is updated every week. And that really provides a snapshot overview of the vaccines which are under rolling review, evaluation, or authorized. And we produce a similar one for therapeutics. On to the next one then. And this again, referring back to how vaccines are developed and authorized, provides the different tiers of information where you can go in and read an explanation about that. It also covers the post-marketing monitoring phase. And again, it clarifies that vaccines are being developed following the same legal requirements for pharmaceutical quality, safety, and efficacy as for other medicines. On to the next one, please. Now, in terms of information on vaccines, we provide several levels of information. So you can start by looking at the high-level product information. You can look at medicines overviews, which are written in very simple, plain language. Then you can delve into more detail into the assessment itself in the European Public Assessment Reports. And then if you'd like to go into more detail on the clinical data, you can access the clinical data on this area of our website, which is shown on this slide. And that shows the data that has underpinned those regulatory decisions. It includes the clinical summaries, but also the clinical study reports. On to the next one, please. And this is just another example of the information we're putting out on social media. It shows how we're communicating on the evaluation and the approval of COVID-19 vaccines, primarily on Twitter and LinkedIn, and we have a simple timeline on the right-hand side to visualize the process. On to the next one. And this just summarizes who we're working with. So we're actively engaging with patients, healthcare professionals, through their representatives in the pandemic task force, also very importantly through our regular working party interactions. And they're also assisting us in user testing our information materials, and we're doing more and more of this. Working closely with the European Commission, with ECDC and the national competent authorities, we're also making efforts to communicate information in the most meaningful way, so using plain language and again, user testing the messages to promote understanding. On to the next one, please. Now, we are very keen to listen to the public and our stakeholders and address any concerns on vaccines as they arise. We launched the first in our series of public stakeholder meetings in December, and today's meeting brings us to a total of 4. Links of the previous meetings are provided here for ease of access. On to the next one, please. And really, this is just to close. So in terms of the take-home messages from me, it really is to be wary of misinformation. It can have serious consequences. So to ensure you get the facts, go to the public health authorities and other reputable sources of information. Ensuring access to reliable information, good and timely communication and transparency are really key to reinforcing trust in decisions of regulators, but also in understanding the rationale that underpins those all-important decisions on medicines and vaccines. And it's not just about transparency, it's about providing access to clinical data. We don't just want to publish information, we also want to add context, explain the science in plain language. Engagement is really crucial for us, so actively listening to your questions, to any concerns you have, so we can hopefully address them, and involving stakeholders and members of the public in our activities. And on that note, we're very much looking forward to discussing with you today. So on my final slide, I'll leave you to a link to our corporate website for further information, where you'll find all information on COVID accessible through our COVID homepage. So thank you very much, and I'll now pass the floor back to Fergus.